Alright, so yung lesson natin for this week is papaliwanag ko yung lesson 2.1, which is the introduction of to art and visual arts. Although siguro nabasa nyo na yan since pinagawa ko na sa inyo yung polishing time at yung let's see what you got. And ngayon, explain lang natin yung lesson natin para kumbaga pumasok sa isip natin yung tungkol sa art and visual arts. So, i-present na natin. Ayan. Alright, so yung lesson natin is about lesson 2.1, Introduction to Art and Visual Arts. So one of our goal is to clearly define what is visual arts, but defining art is said to be elusive. So ibig sabihin medyo magulo o medyo nakakalito yung pagde-define ng ano ba yung scening, no? Hanggang sa ngayon medyo naguguluhan pa rin sila kung ano ba yung matag na sining. So para mapagkasunduan lahat na lang na merong criteria, mag-fall sa criteria na to is considered to be an art, no? So if we could look on the history development of the idea of art, its use on communication, its significant form as well as the art world. So the art is not just for the purpose of something to look at, but it's more of a communication, pakikipag-usap from one generation to another, from one person to another, sending out message. And then the importance of the painting or an artwork is that meron siya ibig sabihin na anyone can use the art to say something, to send message doon sa anyone na makakita nung artwork, no? So before that, in the ancient Greeks definition of art as mimesis, so remember the term mimesis, so it is imitating of the real world. So appears in the myth of the Zeuxis and Parrhasius, rival painters from ancient Greece in the late 5th century BCE, who competed for the title of greatest artist, no? Figure 5 is about Zeuxis, who painted a bowl of grapes. Ayan yung picture na yan. A bowl of grapes that has so lifelike that birds came down to peck at the image of fruit. Parrhasius was unimpressed, and with this achievement, when viewing Parrhasius' work, Zeuxis on his part asked that the curtain over the painting be drawn back so he could see his rival's work more clearly. Parrhasius declared himself the victor because the curtain was the painting, and while Zeuxis pulled the birds with his work, Parrhasius pulled a thinking human being, a much more difficult feat. So yan, kung mapapansin nyo sa painting natin, ano sa image, ito yung si Zeuxis na gusto niyang patanggal yung cortina para makita yung artwork ni Parrhasius. So ang naloko ni Parrhasius ay si Zeuxis. So at this time, yung Greek definition of artwork is kung kailangan lang nilang magaya perfectly kung ano yung itsura ng katotohanang mundo, yung real world na tinatawag, o yung totoong mundo, no? Yung mga bagay sa totoong mundo, kapag nagaya nila sa kanilang mga painting, ibig sabihin surrealist yung type nila, or sabi natin mimesis, as in ginagaya. Ayan, mas yun yung tinuturing nilang artwork. Ayan. So syempre, yung idea na ganyan ay common sa panahon nila because yun yung mga sabi na unang panahon na simple lang yung we are compiling yung definitions ng mga bagay-bagay. So kasama dun yung definition ng art. So pag sinabing artwork, kailangan gayang-gaya niya yung real world, no? So yun yung definition nila, the mimesis or art as a mimesis. So somewhat the ancient Greeks felt that the visual artist's goal was to copy visual experience. Ibig sabihin, to copy visual experience, ako as a painter, no? Ako as a visual artist, kailangan ko lang kopyahin yung nakikita ng aking mata and then put it in an artwork And then, kung sino mang makakita ng artwork na yun will copy, will experience the same visual experience na naranasan ko. So same lang yan nung same lang yan ng photography, 'di ba? Pag nag-photography kayo, 'di ba? Yung halimbawa sa Instagram ninyo, bago nyo kainin yung isang pagkain, minsan pinipicturean nyo muna siya to share your visual experience para ipakita sa ibang tao kung ano yung nakikita ko as a creator ng visual experience o ng artwork o ng photograph. Ayan. So this approach appears in the realism of ancient Greek sculpture and pottery. So yan yung kapansin-pansin sa mga pottery, sculpture, yung hubog ng tao, 'di ba, sa mga sculpture, yung kadalasang kanilang ginagaya. Ayan, para ipakita ko na magaling silang artist, the more na mas gayang-gaya yung artwork, yun, yung katawan nung sa sculpture, mas effective daw yung artwork o mas kino-consider yun na artwork. Ganun nung panahon nila. So, we must sadly note that due to the action of time and weather, no paintings from ancient Greek artists exist today. So wala nang naiwan na mga artworks ng mga Greek artists sa ngayon dahil sa mga syempre pangyayari. Ayan, mga lindol, mga bagyo, mga ganun, lumubog. Ayan, we can only surmise their quality based on tales such as that of Xerxes and Parrhasius, the obvious skill in ancient Greek sculpture and in drawings that survive on ancient Greek pottery. But this definition of art is copying reality has a problem. So, meron daw, kumbaga, question ni Jackson Pollock yung concept ng yung art should copy reality na concept, no? As a leader in New York School of the 1950s intentionally did not copy existing object in his art. While painting these works, Pollock and his few fellow artists would consciously avoid making works or passages that resembles recognizable object. They succeeded at making artwork that did not copy anything, thus demonstrating that the ancient Greek view of art as mimesis, simply copying, does not sufficiently define art. So, ano yung ginawa nila Jackson Pollock at sa yung kanyang yung School of Art, no? Ang ginawa nila is nagpaint sila pero yung iniiba nila yung hugis, iniiba nila yung itsura, kulay, no, ng mga bagay to make it appear unrecognizable. Pero it is pleasing in the eyes ng kanilang mga viewers. So as long na maganda, kahit hindi recognizable. Halimbawa, yung apple, halimbawa yung prutas, ayan, yung mga prutas na dinodrawing nila, they consciously, no? Ibig sabihin sinasadya nila na baguhin yung larawan, yung kulay, yung forma para para hindi maging recognizable pero andun pa rin yung dating harmony ng shapes, color para maging considerable siya na artwork. So by that, sinabi nila na o napatunayan nila na ang sining ay hindi lamang pangungopia ng realidad kundi anything or something beyond that, no? Ay yung mga bagay na pwede i-consider na artwork. So a later attempt to defining art, so tandaan nyo, no? Una, copying reality. And then pangalawa, kahit hindi i-copy reality, as long na it is beautiful, it is good in the eyes of the viewers, and even sabihin natin na later on kasi di-discuss natin yung yung tinatawag nating labelers, no? Sila yung nagle-label kung ano yung artwork at alin yung hindi, no? Ayan. So lumawak yung meaning, lumawak yung sakop ng artwork na because sa ginawa nila Pollock. So, a later attempt at defining art comes from the 19th century Russian author Leo Tolstoy. So, Tolstoy wrote on many subjects and is the author of the great novel War and Peace. He was also an art theorist and he proposed that art is the communication of feeling, no? Stating that art is human activity consisting in this, that one man consciously by meaning of certain external signs hands on to the other's feelings he has lived through, and that others are infected by these feelings and also experience them. Okay, so ano yung gustong patunayan ni Tolstoy na somewhat the art is a communication of feeling. Hindi siya communication lang of mere information, but more on communication of feeling. Ibig sabihin, yung isang artwork can evoke, o sabi sometimes provoke, o kaya ay imply feelings doon sa nakakita, no? Kung ano yung nararamdaman daw ng artist habang ginagawa niya yung artwork, no? At yung um, yung artwork na nagawa niya ay meron ding nagawa niya ng kumbaga emosyon na pwede mong maramdaman, no? So nagko-communicate 'yon na yung nararamdaman ng artist na ipaparamdam din niya doon sa mga sa mga viewers, no? So parang katulad din niya nung Mimesis na copying visual experience. But this time, hindi lang siya visual experience, kundi kaakibat ng visual experience is that yung emotion na natitrigger ng artwork, which is sometimes totoo yan. Pero not all the artworks may ganun, no? Maobserbahan nyo rin naman yun. May mga artwork na malungkot, na ikaw rin nalungkot ka. May ibang artwork na maganda, masaya, 'di ba? So nasayahan ka rin, 'di ba? So may ganon, pero hindi lahat ay ganon. So yun yung reason, yung problem dito. So this also may scope of the concept of more primitive artworks like cave paintings and paintings through the skin of animals or plants. On the first glance, we can say it is art, but becomes more utilitarian than art, since it has become communication pathway from one civilization to the another. So yan. So yung una, yung communication of feeling nga, mayroon kang isang artwork na ginawa ng artist, meron siyang nararamdaman o gustong iparamdam doon sa viewers niya, naging effective yon kasi nga nararamdaman din yon ng mga tagatingin ng artwork. Sometimes it becomes a utilitarian, so the utilitarian than art. Papasok yan yung concept ng crafts, 'di ba? Merong silbi. Hindi lang siya for the image, for the purpose of image or something to look at. Naging utilitarian siya in a way na as a record, no purpose, yung mga naunang tao nagpaint sila sa balat ng hayop sa mga kuweba, no, to tell anong itsura nung paligid nila, 'di ba? As a visual experience, 'di ba? Communication of feeling kapag meron silang gustong sabihin doon sa mga susunod na generation. So it becomes utilitarian than mere purpose of something to look at and then something to provoke emotions. So napapansin nyo medyo parang lumalabo yung pinapaliwanag natin again from the copying images nung panahon ng Greek, and then sabi nga hindi raw ganoon yon, sabi nila Pollock, pero lumawak lang yung meaning ng art, 'di ba? Now nadagdagan na naman siya as something na can communicate feelings, no? Nadagdagan yung ibig sabihin ng artwork natin. So, doon lang tayo i-follow natin yung ganong side. So, likewise, this definition fails because it is impossible to confirm that the feelings of the artist have been successfully conveyed to another person. So, it fails. Bakit? Kasi minsan the artist already is dead. Ngayon, paano mo sabihin na tama ba ako yung gusto mong iparating sa mga viewer mo ay maging malungkot? Hindi mo na mako-confirm yun kasi minsan malayo yung artist o patay na yung artist, no? Kasi we're talking about his arts that yung kumbaga naglalakbay sa iba't ibang panahon, 'di ba? Namatay na yung artist, iba na naman yung viewers, 'di ba? Pag pumunta ka ng Manila, ng museo, 'di ba? Yung National Museum, andun yung artwork ni Juan Luna, 'di ba? Yung Spoliarium. Pwede mo siya makita. Pwede kang may maramdaman, pwede kang may makuhang mensahe, pero hindi mo pwedeng ma-confirm na, teka, ito ba tama ba yung naramdaman ko? Tama ba yung nakuha kong information? Ayan, 'di ba? So yun yung kaya nag-fail yung concept na communication of feeling kasi nga hindi confirmable, di ba? Pag napag-usap ka, kailangan ma-confirm mo na tama yung pinag-uusapan natin. So that's why this concept ni Tolstoy fails, no? Ayan. But still, because of that, because of Tolstoy's suggestion or sabihin natin yung kanyang theory, nadagdagan na an art could be no? A communication of feeling. It could be something to communicate feeling, to provoke feelings. Ayan. So moving on, so to address this limitation of existing definition of art, in 1913, English art critic Clive Bell proposed that art is significant form or the quality that brings us aesthetic pleasure. So the art is a significant form, mahalagang bagay, no, mahalagang forma, no, that give us aesthetic pleasure. Yung bagay na kapag tiningnan mo, you get something that pleases you, no, nasiyahan ka, na ano ka, kumbaga na-satisfy ka yung iyong visual experience. So yun, it is a form, it is something. It could be a sculpture, a painting, no, a graphics or graphic art, 'di ba? It could be a form significant because it gives you something. When you see it, huminto ka, ano, nag-enjoy ka kahit papaano. Huminto ka, natuwa ka kahit papaano, lungkot ka o whatever na naramdaman mo, basta huminto ka. Pakiramdam mo may sense yung nakikita mo. Therefore, that thing, no matter what kind of form was that, is significant, important, therefore worthy of your time. Kaya you can call it as an art. So, ganun yung concept natin. The significant form. Kasi kung hindi significant, kung walang kwenta sa'yo, ba't mo hihintuan? Bakit mo bibigyan ng panahon o 'di ba ng oras para tingnan? So, yun yung reason, yun yung paliwanag ni Clive Bell. Ayan. Bell stated to appreciate a work of art, we need bring with us nothing but a sense of form and color. In Bell's view, the term form simply means line, shape, mass, as well as color. Significant form is the collection of those elements that rises to the level of your awareness and give you noticeable pleasure in its beauty. Ayan. So, ayun yung definition niya ng significant form. So yung pinagsama-samang kulay, pinagsama-samang linya, pinagsama-samang shape, yan, kung naalala nyo pa yung elements of art, di ba? Line, shape, we have color, value, yan, mga bagay na yan. Yung pagsasama-sama yan gives you, it's a collection of those elements, 'di ba? Arises to your awareness, 'di ba? And gives you noticeable pleasure. So, yun yung significant form. Kaya sabi natin, kahit mapa-sculpture man yan, mapa-painting man yan, o mapa-graphics man yan, a movie man yan, visual experience, whatever is that, it is a combination of these elements rather, no, and gives you pleasure or something like that. Okay, so unfortunately, aesthetics, pleasure in this beauty and appreciation of art are impossible to measure or reliably define. What brings aesthetic pleasure to one person may not affect another. So yung gusto nating ang gusto lang sabihin diyan, yung something na natuwa ka. Sabi nga natin, kung maalala niyo yung MIL natin, 'di ba? Pagka define natin yung sasabing media experience, no? Ikaw bilang tao, individually, iba yung gusto mo, iba yung naliligayahan ka kumpara sa isa mong kaibigan, 'di ba? Kahit nga kapatid mo na no? Kahit magkapatid na kayo, iba pa rin yung paborito ng isa, iba pa rin yung gusto ng isa, 'di ba? So yun yung reason kaya sinasabi natin na aesthetic pleasure to one person may not affect another kasi magkakaiba tayo ng aesthetic pleasure. Halimbawa, meron tayong isang music na pinapakinggan, 'di ba? Yung hindi kayo pare-pareho ng kahit sabay-sabay kayo nakikinig ng music na 'yon o nakatingin sa painting na 'yon, maaaring magkakaiba kayo ng bagay na nagagandahan kayo, no? O kaya nagpo-push sa inyo para patuloy na i-consume yung media na 'yon. On this case, painting. Halimbawa, for example, painting. Kaya nyo tinitingnan yung bagay na yun kasi it could be, no, different yung inyo nakikita, different yung reason kung ba't kayo nananatiling nakatingin doon sa artwork. So that's the aesthetic pleasure that is different from one another. Yeah. So aesthetic pleasure exists only in the viewer, not in the object. So yan. Sabihin aesthetic, sabi nga, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Meaning, yung aesthetic, no, aesthetic pleasure exists only on the beholder, doon sa nakakita. Wala doon sa object. Bakit? Ba't wala doon sa object? Kasi pwedeng magbago o mag-iba-iba yung aesthetic pleasure na nararamdaman ng bawat isa, ng bawat tao. So, wala yun sa bagay kundi nasa tao. Ayan. So the significant form is purely subjective. While Clive Bell did advance the debate about art by moving it away from requiring strict representation, his definition gets us no closer to understanding what does or does not qualify as an yan. Yan. So wala siyang gustong i-define, wala siyang gustong gawing criteria na sasabihin natin ano yung art, alin yung hindi art. So, ang gusto lang yung sabihin is that it could be it is a significant form and give something on us, aesthetic pleasure. So, one definition of art widely held today was first promoted in the 1960s by American philosopher George Dickey and Arthur Danto. So, and it's called the institutional theory of art or the art world theory yan. Ito yung pinaka-ginagamit natin ngayon. Art is an object or set of condition that has been designated as art by a person or persons acting on behalf of the art world. And the art world is a complex field of forces that determine what is and is not art. So, papasok na rito yung tinatawag nating person or persons acting behalf of the art world. So, may tinatawag tayong labelers sa sining. Ngayon, ganito yan. As a viewer, we are viewer. We are all viewers. Pero there are people, no, that could represent the art world and sila yung magsasabi kung ano yung sining at ano hindi. Halimbawa, sabihin natin yung mga national artists o kaya an organization, di ba? Ano yan, yung mga organization sa Pilipinas na nagsasabi kung alin yung sino yung national artist, di ba? Ayan. So they represent in behalf of the art world na pag sinabi nilang ito sining ito, kahit sabihin natin hindi tayo ganong nagagandahan, wala tayong nakukuhang aesthetic pleasure, but because they told us that this is an art, well, no choice tayo but that is an art. So nagkaroon tayo ng person. Teka lang. Ayan. Wait lang. Kape muna kayo. Inom kayo tubig. Alright. Okay. Sasala tayo. So, sino yung mga person or persons acting on behalf of the art world? It could be the kings, di ba? Unang example niyan yung mga hari nung panahon, nung unang panahon. Pag sinabi, when you draw portrait of the king, no? O kaya yung kanyang kamag-anak, and then you present it to the king, at sinabi nila, oh ito, ano to, ah, isa siyang pintor, 'di ba? Dahil sa kapangyarihan ng isang hari, 'di ba? Nagkaroon na ng label na ito artist to. Alam mo 'yon? Ito, pintor to. So ngayon, anything na gawin na ng tao na 'yon, since binasbasa na siya ng hari, ayun, no? Pintor na siya. Art na 'yon, yung mga gawin niya. Parang ano lang yan, parang ganito lang yan. Parang GMA Artist Center, parang ganyan. GMA Artist Center are the persons acting in behalf of the art world, no? So ngayon pag sinabi nila, ito yung artista, halimbawa Alden Richard, artista 'yan, 'di ba? Pogi naman si Alden Richard, 'di ba? So ngayon, anything na gawin ni Alden Richard as an artist, no? Art na 'yon. 'Yun yung concept. Ganun kasimple 'yan. Kasi arte na niya 'yon, 'di ba? Music na 'yon. Kahit hindi ganoon kaganda yung boses niya, halatang auto-tune lang, 'di ba? Kasi nga, sabi ng Artist Center, which uh, a person or sabi nga a group that acting in behalf of the art world, ano man yung gawin niya, well, art na 'yon or sabi music na 'yon, 'di ba? So, yan yung nadagdag doon sa konsepto. So kailangan meron munang in behalf of the art world mag validate nung art or nung artist para masabing isining yun. So the art world is a complex field of forces that determine what is and is not art. Unfortunately, this definition get us no further along because it's not about art at all. Instead, it is about who has the power to define art, which is a political issue, not as an aesthetic one. 'di ba? So it is more of political. Bakit? Halimbawa, yung painting ni Richard Gomez. Pamilyar kayo doon? Painting ni Richard Gomez, yung Ethics, kulay yellow, 'di ba? So yun, ang pangit nun, 'di ba? Ang pangit nun, but it was considered to be an art, plus nabenta pa siya as an artwork, 'di ba? Galing, 'di ba? Galing. But kung titignan mo na maigi, it is a political issue. Kasi kaya binili yun kasi gawa ni Richard Gomez yun. Hindi dahil maganda yun. So, yeah, that's the reason kung ba't hindi tayo ganong umusad doon sa definition ng art because of that. Kasi nga, it's more on political issue, not on aesthetic one. Yung aesthetic, hindi yung sa maganda, kundi kasi artist na siya eh. Artist siya, kaya yung lahat ng gawa niya artwork. Parang ano na nga, parang Leonardo da Vinci, parang sila Michelangelo. Mga artist sila na binasbasan ng mga, sabihin natin kung sino man nung panahon na yon, mga hari, mga mga pinuno ng simbahan, 'di ba? They are the one na give them the power, no? Para artist na kayo. Kaya whatever na gawin nila, kahit sabihin natin, oh, maganda naman, pero may mga artwork din sila na hindi ganoon kagaganda, pero dahil nga gawa nila, it is considered to be art. So power of defining what is art and what is not art is very visible until today, that there should be someone, yan could be an authority or someone with educational background or someone held by the public to verify that something is an art. In the case of visual arts, to make something considered to be an art, the artist puts his art in different platform and let the society decide if this is an art. Somewhat this was very democratic and lessened the monopoly of art by the authorities. So ganun yung nangyayari sa atin ngayon, no? Ayan. A painting, a graphic arts, a drawing, whatever, no? Na sabihin naging digital, nilalagay natin sa social media, and then let the society decide if it's an art or not. And then kung hindi nila i-consider as art, okay lang. 'Di ba? At least na ano mo. Kasi nagbabago-bago no, nagbabago-bago sa bawat tao yung kung ano yung sining at ano yung hindi because of the aesthetic pleasure. Kapag ka may naramdaman kang aesthetic pleasure dun sa nakikita mo, 'di ba? You consider that as an art. Kapag ka wala ka naman naramdaman o kaya walang sense, yun minsan hindi mo dinidisregard mo siya as an art. Ayan. So, but the problem is lacking of uniform or standard definition of art by the public, where the public just consider art if they can understand, its communication, or it's beautiful in their perspective or the significant form in aesthetics. Ayan. So, punta tayo rito. We need both art and science to exist in the world. From the earliest age, we both observe the world and do things to change it. We are all both scientists and artists. Every human activity has both a science and an art. Anyone who has participated in the discipline of yoga, for example, can see that even something as small as breathing has both art and science to it. This definition of art covers the wide variety of objects that we see in museums, social media, or even in daily walk to work. But this definition of art is not enough. The bigger question is, what art is worthy of our attention, and how do we know when we have found it? Ultimately, each of us must answer the question for ourselves. So, bahala na kayo sa sarili nyo. So, a non-verbal source of information, the visual art, distinct from verbal and literary arts, carry their potential mainly through perceptual means without resort to dictionaries and formalized grammar. So, ano yung pagkakaiba nila? It is a non-verbal. Art is non-verbal source of information. Ayan. Walang aklat na sinulat para magkaroon ng standard definition na kapag nag-drawing ka ng prutas na itim, nakakalason yun. Wala ring definition ng art na kapag nag-drawing ka ng prutas na kulay pula ay apple na yon. Malay mo, mangga yon pero mapula. O kaya, mangga yon pero wala na siyang Crayola. 'Di ba? So walang maayos na nakasulat na libro tungkol diyan. It is more of subjective thing, no? Na pwedeng magbago-bago yung ibig sabihin from one person to another. So this, because of that, we have this artist as creator, presentation, and the viewer. Kung titingnan mo ng maigi, this is the basic flow of what the art is doing in the transfer of communication, a transfer of aesthetic um, or significant form. Yung artist as creator created something as a presentation. No, meron kang artist as creator, siya yung may kakayanang gumawa ng bagay. At yung presentation naman niya ay yung bagay na ginawa ng artist as creator. No? It could be the painting. So artist, then painting, and then the viewer. So ayan. Ngayon, ang problema dito is that the artist should know how to communicate to the viewer. Ganito yan, no? Halimbawa, yung punta tayo sa ideya ng um, relihiyon, no? Halimbawa, yung mga ano natin, yung mga sila San Pablo, San Roque, mga yon, yung may manok, may aso, diba? Yung mga ganun na mga santo. Ayan. Yung mga artists as creator ng mga bagay na yon, no? They created sabi natin normal, uniform, standard image ng mga saints. 'Di ba? Na pagka tao na mayroong kasamang manok, sino 'yon? 'Di ba? San Pedro ata 'yun eh. San Pedro ba 'yun? San Pedro ata yung may lechonang manok eh. Anyway, so dahil gets yun, na kailangan may uniform. Pag sinabi mong angel, 'di ba? Angel, ibig sabihin white yung wings. 'Di ba? Parang dove yung wings. 'Di ba? So, yung artist, they created ito yon, dapat pagka nakita to ng viewer, maintindihan nila. So, they created uniform. 'Di ba? Kailangan yung mga symbols na ginagamit natin for in the term of Catholicism, 'di ba? Yung cross, no? Kapag sinabi mong cross, yan, yung artist created that image cross, no? Yung painting na may cross o kaya yung sculpture na cross as the presentation, yung viewer maiintindihan agad yon. So, para maging successful yung transfer of communication. Parang ganito lang yan eh. Kung Katoliko, yung gumawa, artist as creator ay Katoliko, sabihin natin na Christian, ayan, yung mga artwork niya, presentation niya is more on Christian images din, angels, 'di ba? Mga saints, yung image ni Jesus, 'di ba? Yun yung mga presentation, standard 'yon na kapag nakita ng viewer na Christian, maigets niya agad 'yon. Yan yung reason kung bakit pag nakita tayo ng mga gods ng mga Hinduism, gods ng Muslim o sa mga Diyos ng mga o mga rebulto ng mga yung mga iba yung mga Vishnu, yan yung mga images ng mga iba pang mga sabihin hindi man religion but yung mga yung mga pangalan sila Loki, yon sila yung mga ganon, 'di ba? Dati naiintindihan kasi hindi tayo familiar doon. Tandaan niyo yun. Yung communication in terms of visual, kailangan as an artist, alam mo makipag-communicate ano yung naiintindihan ng viewers mo. Kasi pagka nag-create ka ng artwork na hindi naiintindihan ng viewer mo, nababaliwala yung presentation. No, walang yung presentation na nanalify. Wala, hindi naiintindihan ng viewer mo. Ayan yung reason. So, that the artist should consider the viewers in making the presentation. Bakit? Kasi hindi naman mag-uusap directly si artist at si viewer. Kundi si artist kailangan muna ng channel o ng pathway to communicate with the viewer, which is the presentation or the artwork through the sculpture, through the art. So yung yung art rather ay nasa gitna, which is art is the presentation. So, naintindihan niyo ba yung sinasabi ko? Okay? So, artists should know kung ano yung alam ng viewer para magkaintindihan sila. So, the artist as creator has the mental and physical task of arranging the parts that make up a whole that later becomes an offering of perspective to the viewer. So guys, for the artist as creator, making the art no matter what medium he or she is using is the process of mind, and thus, it is an intellectual activity. despite the lack of formalized grammar such as that which underpins verbal language. As viewer, we are constantly called upon to process information of a non-verbal kind. Yan. So, imagine niyo yan, kayo ay layout artist, 'di ba? Ang kagandahan ng art is that hindi mo kailangan ng dictionary, hindi mo kailangan mag-aral ng isa pang language. Sometimes the visual this visual presentation, minsan yan pa yung nakasave sa mga ibang tao na napupunta sa lugar na hindi marunong makapagsalita ng parehong lengguwahe. Halimbawa, ikaw ay pumunta ng Japan, hindi ka naman nag-aral paano mag-Japanese, 'di ba? So ano gagawin pag bumili ka ng pagkain, 'di ba? Gagawin mo is tuturo mo lang kung ano yung pagkain na gusto mo, yung nakalagay dun sa menu, 'di ba? So by that, hindi mo kailangan ng verbal language. Ang kailangan mo lang is to process yung information na ino-offer ng visual ng visual ng visual thing nung artwork na tinatawag natin. So ayan. So punta tayo rito. Art matters because it is seen not as an extra but as extension of our sentient and mindful being. So we as humans are natural gatherers of information, and visual arts offers a glance of enormous information, triggering and guided by previous experience or expectation. So ganito yan, yung tinutukoy diyan. It is an extension of sentient and mindful being. Hindi ka makakaintindi ng artwork kung hindi ka nag-iisip. Hindi ka makakaintindi ng artwork kung wala kang alam, kung tanga ka, no? Wala kang maintindihan artwork. Kasi tandaan mo, in order for you to understand something, kahit hindi na siya artwork, no? Binabase mo yun sa past experience mo. Halimbawa, taga-bundok ka, no? Taga-bundok ka, tapos bumaba ka ng Maynila. LRT pa lang tinuturo mo na. 'Di ba? Kasi walang ganyan doon sa inyo. Wala ka pang experience kumbaga tungkol sa bagay na 'yan. Ayan. So, ganun yung concept. In order to understand things, kailangan mo munang maranasan yung bagay na yun. O sabihin natin, kahit pa paano may karanasan ka doon. Yan yung reason kung ba tayo nag-aaral. Diba? Pa nag-aaral ka, may mga matutunan kang mga bagay. Inai-experience mo kasi yon. Kahit sabihin natin hindi direct, no? Kahit kwento na lang sa'yo, still you get information kasi nasabi sa'yo o nakuha mo doon sa mga teacher mo. So, as a human natural gatherer of information, yan, offer us a glance of enormous information and triggered, maaalala lang natin, ito yung tinutukoy niya, ito yung sinasabi niya, ito yung tinuro sa amin, 'di ba? Kahit because of the experience or expectations, no, na naranasan mo nung mga naunang panahon. Ayan. Nagets nyo ako? Okay pa kayo dyan? Gising pa ba kayo? Wala nang sumagot. Anyway, so the extension of fine art. The extension of the fine art, mabilis na lang to guys. Konti na lang yan. O yun na, last na yan eh. So the extinction of fine art, anything that we can see can be considered as visual art, but the visual art has distinction and includes the fine art. So the distinction between craft and art is real and important, diba? The distinction is most understood as one based on the use or end purpose of an object or as an effect of the material used. So clay, textiles, glass, and jewelry are long considered the province of craft, not art. If an object intended use was a part of a daily living, then it was generally thought to be product of crafts, not fine art. But many objects originally intended to be functional, such as quilts, are now thought qualify as fine art. So ito yung quilt. Ito yung niluluhuran. Ayan. Anyone who has been exposed to training in crafts such as carpentry or plumbing recognizes that craft follows a formula, that is a set of rules that govern not only how the work is to be conducted but also what the outcome of the work must be. Sa madaling salita, ganito yan, no? Yung craft versus art is yung purpose, no? Kapag yung bagay ay gagamitin, no, may function siya gagamitin, ano yon, craft yon. Kapag fine art, totally para lang siya tingnan. Halimbawa, sa bahay nyo, meron kayong pinggan. Pinggan na may picture ng nanay mo, no? Ngayon, dahil picture ng nanay mo yun nandun, hindi ko alam kung gagamitin nyo ba yun as kakainan, di ba? Nasa inyo naman yun. Pero pinggan kasi siya, di ba? So, kung pinggan at pinagkainan ninyo, that is a craft. Pero, kapag yung pinggan, naging canvas lang para maging picture frame, o sabihin lagayan ng picture ng nanay mo, then could be, or it should be, a fine art. Naintindihan nyo ako? Pag tinitingnan lang siya, fine art lang yon. Halimbawa, yung gusali, sa isang paano ba? Poste doon sa simbahan, 'di ba? Poste sa simbahan. Ito ay poste. Ang trabaho niya patibayin yung simbahan. Kaso pininturahan, drawingan, no? O kaya ay nilagyan ng painting. So, fine art po ba 'yun o craft? Well, kung as a purpose pampatibay ng building, yung poste na 'yun is a craft, no? May rules, 'di ba? May rules, mayroong a set of rules govern not only how the work is to be conducted but also what the outcome and the work must be, no? Kapag kayong poste masyadong makitid para doon sa building, babagsak 'yon. So therefore craft siya. Pero dahil sa pinagpaintingan siya, no? Magiging art po ba siya? Hindi, kasi secondary purpose na lang yung pag-painting sa kanya. Liban na lang kung yung poste na yon tinayo na walang susuportahan, tinayo lang para pagdrawingan, then that could be a fine art. Naintindihan niyo ako? Diba? Halimbawa, relo. Yung relo nyo sa bahay, merong mukha. Diba? Mukha nung kanino mang mukha. Ayan. Pero relo kasi siya. So, pinaglagay lang siya ng art. So, craft pa rin yung tawag sa kanya. Okay? So, ganun lang kasimple yan. Huwag nyo nang pahirapan yung sarili nyo. Okay? So, we have the decorative art. Yung sasabi nga natin, yung pinggan nyo, nananahimik, dapat pagkainan ng kung ano-ano, ginawa nyong decorative. So, yan ang nangyari dyan. So, when painting and sculpture were placed in the new category of fine art, the skilled activities they were formerly associated with textile, ceramics, metalworks, furniture making, and so on were grouped together under various names. Yeah. Each of which suggested a contrast with fine art. They were referred to as decorative art. So, ayan. Hindi na siya pinggan lang, kundi decorative art na lang yung tawag sa kanya. Pinggan kasi nilagay ng mukha ng nanay nyo. So, contemporary art, there are no definition of contemporary art, but the known definition is as art that has been and continues to be created during lifetime. The term demands respect from the beginning, and its first word, contemporary, it almost seems to suggest that you must know what it is without having to ask. Ayan. Contemporary is art made today by living artists, such as it reflects the complex issues that shape our diverse, global, and rapidly changing world. Yan. So, yung definition ng contemporary art nila is that kailangan yung artist ay buhay pa, no? And nagde-develop. Ibig sabihin, ito, nagbabago, alam mo yun, ito yung artwork niya dati, and then asahan mo, it's a series of artworks, nagiging contemporary yung tawag doon. Yun yung definition nila. Siguro maaaring di iba yan sa definition na nakasanayan natin. Okay, so again, nagawa nyo na naman na yung polishing time. Expect na I will give you the copy nung sunod na lesson, yung unit 3 for this week, or pwedeng hatiin natin yon kasi nga after unit 3 magmi-midterm na kayo. Okay? So thank you so much for listening. Sana meron nakuha kayo sa araw na to. Ka lang.